Well, the Queen is the head of the Commonwealth. She's 94 years old. She's been on the throne for 68 years. Now, whatever your view of the monarchy, or the Queen for that matter, she's the longest serving ruler of any kind in the world right now. And she has huge, huge respect from many people in Britain and indeed around the world. She's also head of the Commonwealth, which has many countries which are predominantly with black citizens. So you look at this and you're accusing the Queen and the monarchy and the institution of being racist. That's really what was going down here. And there were two central charges, Tucker, for this alleged racism. One was what we've just heard, where Meghan Markle said there were several conversations while she was pregnant in which Harry was having a conversation several times, she said, with a member of the royal family who was talking about the potential skin color of the child.
Let's go.
So that was skin color of the child. Now, we don't know who that was. We don't know what the context of that conversation was. Was it, as Thomas Markle, her father, said to me the next day, as innocent as somebody saying, hey, given her father is, Meghan's father's white, her mother's black, what color would the baby be? I think that's an innocent question, unless it's loaded with a sense of derogatory tone or concern, and then it becomes racism. And then it becomes racism. We simply don't know. And we don't even know who's supposed to have said this. But then Harry was asked the same question. And Harry didn't say it was several conversations when Meghan was pregnant. He said it was a conversation that happened way before, at the start of their relationship, years before Meghan said it happened. So now we have a massive inconsistency. One conversation, not two. Maybe a year and a half, 2 years before Meghan said it happened. She didn't even hear it. We don't know the context. We don't know what was said. And the second charge involved this allegation she made, which was even more incendiary to me, which was that Archie, their boy, had been banned from becoming a prince because of his skin colour. Now, that is completely untrue. It's not just a sense of her lived experience being untrue. It is factually incorrect. That boy was never going to be a prince until Prince Charles, Harry's father, becomes king on the death of the Queen. And that's going to happen whatever the skin colour of Archie's mother. That's set in stone. It's been the case for 100 years. So for Meghan Markle to try and create a story that says that the decision to not give Archie the title of prince was based on his skin colour is a lie. Now, is she deliberately lying? Is she completely delusional? I don't know. And frankly, I don't care. What I care about is only one person decides titles like that, and it's the Queen. The Queen is not a racist. And yet here we have Meghan Markle, with the support of the Queen's grandson, directly accusing the Queen, because she makes these...
See what nonsense is in store for...
The Queen, because she makes these decisions of being racist and stopping that boy becoming a prince because of his skin colour. And many millions of Americans have simply accepted this to be fact because Oprah Winfrey didn't challenge that presumption. Oprah didn't know that this couldn't possibly be true. So the two central charges of racism against the royal family, one we know very little about and may not have been racism at all. The second one is based on an untruth. And, you know, the idea that the royal family and the Queen in particular are now being depicted as a racist entity, a racist queen presiding over a racist monarchy when she's the head of the...
It's about time.
Racist monarchy when she's the head of the Commonwealth. I'm sorry, I find it completely disgusting. And someone's got to say it. And I should be entitled to hit back and say, no, I'm sorry, facts, to quote the famous phrase, don't care about your feelings or your lived experience. If you're going to accuse people of racism, then you better put up some facts and not the untruths on which you've based your so-called lived experience.
I'm confused by their position, and I think you've done a great job explaining why this can't be true. But if you accuse someone of a moral crime, don't you have to identify the person? If I say I was mugged at gunpoint, I'm not going to tell you who mugged me. You have every right to question whether I was mugged or not, don't you?
I think if you're going to...
I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man.
I think if you're going to accuse people of racism, and I have a real vested interest in this debate, because I've been accused of racism simply for disbelieving Meghan Markle, who we now know was not telling the truth throughout that interview. And I feel very angry about that and very aggrieved about that. And I've seen friends of mine like Sharon Osbourne being removed from their job for defending me because apparently they were defending a racist. I've seen Don Lemon at CNN, the guy who sits in my old office, who I thought was a friend, actually say on his show that I had committed an act of racism by disbelieving somebody. That's an act of racism. That's an act of racism. So you have the Queen, and frankly, every member of the royal family is still smeared with the idea it may have been them who expressed concern over the skin colour of Archie. Well, did they? And if so, who was it? As a British taxpayer who helps pay for the...
Just cool, into the mouth.
The royal family, I'd like to know, actually, if there's a real racist inside the palace. I've met the royals many times. I don't believe they're racist at all. In fact, the only member of the royal family who has had to publicly apologise for being racist is Prince Harry, who a few years ago had to apologise after using a deeply offensive racist term.
I'm going to come.
Offensive racist term about a Pakistani soldier that he was working with. And he used other racial slurs as well in that story which was published in one of the British tabloids, which may explain his hatred of the British tabloids. But he's the only one. And isn't that ironic? That never got mentioned by Oprah Winfrey. And it should have been mentioned. You know, my problem with this whole interview was that these incredibly damaging allegations were tossed out there. And damaging allegations were tossed out there, and none of them were challenged properly. None of them were challenged based on actual reality, or none of them were asked, well, who is this person?
I think it's fair to say, this is my opinion, but that at the most profound level, Oprah is a dishonest person, and she has an agenda that is never stated, but is very obvious.
Come on now, dog.
Is never stated, but it's very obvious if you watch. So I'm going to stop tormenting you with sound bites, but I just want to put one more on the screen. This was the moment that I think the fill-in weather guy shows up just to join the pylon and berate you, and the implication is that you're a racist. Here's the moment.
Let me ask you honestly, on the issue of race, she has now got the whole of America and the worst of the world, frankly, looking upon the palace.
For today.
Said, wait a minute.
The palace, the monarchy, the Queen, everyone in the royal family as a bunch of racists. Is there a difference? If it was said, perhaps in all innocence, right, and they just said, oh, what colour baby might you have, without any suggestion of it being a concern or a worry if it had darker skin, would that in itself, would just the question be racist?
That in itself is fine, but you have to think about...
I'm really mad.
To think about how it feels on the receiving end, because what we're speculating is as to how that message...
I don't know how it was communicated.
Where did that come from? What was that really about? I mean, this is a guy who wouldn't seem to have moral or journalistic standing to lecture you about anything, and yet he does, presumably to his benefit. What's the backstory there, if you don't mind telling us?
Well, the backstory is he's the stand-in weather guy. He's the stand-in weather guy who does the weather occasionally. He's not a journalist, but he's somebody that I've helped with his career a number of times when he's asked me to. And he's somebody who occasionally takes part in our debates in the way that you might see Al Roker do on the Today Show, similar kind of thing. But he's not there very often. But I had specifically asked for him to come in that morning because he'd sent me a private message in which
I got you, homie. Let's go.
He expressed, some concern about what he felt was I wasn't really understanding where Meghan Markle was coming from as a biracial woman. He was himself biracial, and he wanted to explain to me. I said, well, come on air. Let's have the conversation. But the moment he came on air, he came with a pretty premeditated attack on me on a pretty personal level. And frankly, I just wasn't going to have it. Now, I walked off for a few minutes. Then I realized this is stupid. I shouldn't have walked off. You should always be able to have a debate. I was angry in the moment that he was trying to personalize this, make out I had some personal vendetta about Meghan Markle, which I don't. And I came back, and we then had a pretty lively and quite enlightening, like half-hour debate about this. But I couldn't persuade him that on this issue, for example, of Archie being a